Welcome, everyone. This is Anique de Bruin from CISCRP. We are so excited to have you here and to host this webinar. We are very excited to share the results from our latest 2021 Perceptions and Insights study. Those of you who are familiar with this study know that we've been conducting this for since 2013, and it's been really insightful looking at how the results have evolved over the years. So we're very excited to be here today with you to share some of the highlights. Following the latter half of the webinar, we'll be hosting a panel discussion and we'll be introducing our special guests shortly. But before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to Ken Getz, founder and board chair of CISCRP, for some opening remarks. Ken?
Great. Thank you so much, Anique. I just want to echo a hearty welcome to all of you. So glad you could join us today. I want to recognize and thank the CISCRP team and our panelists for today's webinar. I think you'll see that the results have some really compelling insights, and we're really excited to share them with you. As Anique mentioned, we launched the Perceptions and Insights study in 2013. And it really meets a critical need. It's one of the only resources that we have that measures public and patient attitudes and perceptions and experiences at a global level, and really assists our understanding of that experience and those attitudes and how they're changing over time. And we certainly know that 2020, 2021, there have been huge and dramatic shifts and changes in the drug development and clinical research landscape specifically. So you're going to hear a lot about the impact that the pandemic is having on public attitudes and patient experiences in clinical research. There's a lot of virtual and remote activity now, and other patient convenience and patient engagement enhancing initiatives. And all of that is having an impact, and we'll be looking at that today. So just really delighted to be here and to welcome you to our webinar, and I'll turn it back over to the CISCRP team to make introductions.
Great, thanks so much, Ken. So without further ado, I just wanted to introduce some of my colleagues here and our panelists. And Jessica, I'll turn it over. We'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Cronin, and I'm a project manager here at CISCRP. And so over the past few months, I have had the pleasure of working on the 2021 Perceptions and Insights study and analyzing the data and looking at the different survey responses. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing the results with you all today. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Gina.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Pritchek. I'm a research associate on the research services team. So I've been working with Jessica and the rest of the team to help with the analysis of the Perceptions and Insights study. So definitely very excited to share some of these findings with you all today and hear further discussion following.
Great. Thanks so much, Jessica and Gina. And now I'm wanted to express my gratitude, and it's an honor being part of this panel discussion that we're going to have later. Again, my name is Anique de Bruin. I'm the Senior Director of Research Services at CISCRP. So I work closely with Jessica and Gina on launching this study and analyzing some of the results. I'd like to turn it over to Kim to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kim Harper. I'm the site director for Benchmark Research in New Orleans.
Welcome, Kim, and thank you. Crystal.
Hi, my name is Crystal Doucette. I'm the Associate Site Director for Benchmark Research located in our San Angelo, Texas office.
Great. Thanks so much for being here. And Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Aleipe. I'm a research assistant in the Department of Epidemiology at Florida International University, and I'm a patient advocate living with rheumatoid arthritis for 25 years. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We look forward to having an insightful panel discussion a little bit later. So just a brief overview of our agenda today. Jessica and Gina will take you through some of the highlights from the study. And it's divided into 4 different sections. The first section will talk about general awareness and perceptions among the public. Looking at also the decision to participate, what factors go into that decision-making process, what information is most critical to know as somebody's considering participation. We'll also be looking at engagement preferences. What elements of clinical trial participation are most important? Convenience enhancing initiatives, as well as new technology preferences are explored here. And then finally, we'll be going through a section that was purely among prior study volunteers talking about their experiences. And you'll see we actually had a significantly higher sample size for prior study volunteers this year, which was very exciting and offers a lot of insights into their experiences. And then, like I mentioned, we'll regroup at the end and have a lively panel discussion. And then at the end, we'll open it up for any questions from the audience as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Anik. So first, we'll take a look at the sample at the methods overview for the 2021 Perceptions and Insights study. So for this, Venture CISCRP worked on this global questionnaire from input for cross-functional work group. And so they're representatives from pharmaceutical and biotech companies, as well as contract research organizations. The survey was disseminated between April and July of 2021. And it was distributed online with the support of partners such as Clarinet, AES, CureClick, Benchmark Research, and IQVIA. And in total, there was 11,793 individuals who were participated in the survey. And overall, we're really pleased with the robust sample size, especially given the COVID-19 pandemic. And so looking firstly, we're going to explore a little bit more the general awareness and perceptions of clinical research. And again, this is taking a look of overall general public awareness and perceptions. And so looking specifically at those that had never participated in clinical research and getting a better understanding of their awareness as well as perceptions, and comparing that information from 2019 to 2021. And so specifically, there was a decline in individuals who reported an understanding of clinical research perception of clinical research in the term clinical research study. And we speculate that this might be due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the misinformation that might be out there. And so individuals might not fully understand or be aware of what that term means as a result. And then also we wanted to highlight that in the past 6 months, there has been an increase of individuals who self-reported that they had seen or heard of a clinical research study. And so over half of the individuals who had never responded in or never participated in clinical research had heard or seen of a research opportunity. And the top sites were social media, an online advertisement, or through a traditional advertisement such as a subway or bus ad or print ad or newspaper. And then also we noticed too, consistent with 2019, among those who had never participated, the overall perceptions of safety for clinical research remained the same, as well as the importance of having one's doctor be aware of clinical research studies that are conducted in the community. Also consistent with 2019, we're having clinical research presented as options, and not many people had that options presented of clinical research very often, with 8% in 2019 and 7% in 2021. And so we also wanted to explore the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and if that changed individuals' awareness of clinical research studies. And so as you can tell, looking at those who have participated and have clinical research experience versus those who have not, there is an overall increase of those who had reported a great increase or somewhat increase in awareness. However, individuals who had never participated in clinical research, as you can see, there's a significant difference between made aware of their clinical research. And also notably, individuals who identified as Hispanic as well as Black were more likely to say that they their awareness had greatly increased of clinical research. And so also looking at trust in various organizations such as pharmaceutical companies, research centers, government research organizations, as well as government regulatory agencies. Overall, pharmaceutical companies were perceived to be the least trustworthy of those 4 types of organizations. And in general, there was an increase of general trustworthiness from 2019 for research centers, government organizations, and regulatory agencies. And we also noted that those individuals from South America were more likely to report that they trust pharmaceutical companies a lot compared to other organizations. However, we also saw that individuals who identified as white were also more likely to report that they trusted pharmaceutical companies than individuals who did not identify as white. And then we're going to explore a little bit of deciding to participate. So I'll turn it over to Gina.
Thanks, Jessica. So in deciding to participate, we're going to look at overall willingness to participate and then factors that might impact that decision to participate. Next slide, please. Thank you. So overall, when we're looking at general willingness to participate in a clinical research study, we found that it remained pretty consistent from 2019. So however, we do see a slight decrease in those who reported being very willing to participate in a clinical research study, with 34% in 2019 and 30% in 2021. And then we also examined what type of impact the COVID-19 pandemic had on participants' willingness to then participate in a clinical research study. So overall, we saw a mix of responses. For some, it made them more willing, some it had no impact, and some it made them less willing. However, when we broke this down by those who had participated in clinical research studies before and those who had never participated, we noticed that those who had prior clinical research study participation experience, they were more likely to have reported that it made them more willing to participate. And those who had never participated before were more likely to report that the COVID-19 pandemic had no impact on their willingness to participate. Next slide, please. And so then we also looked into the key information for participation decision and what types of information would be important to know prior to making that decision. So here we're specifically looking at those who have never participated before and what types of information would be important to them. So the top three types of information we found were potential risks and benefits, purpose of the clinical research study, and information about the study drug being researched. And so interestingly, we found that for all the information types listed here, non-Hispanic respondents were more likely to actually cite that those would be very important than those identifying as Hispanic. Also, in terms of the confidentiality and knowing how that would be protected, prior to deciding to participate, we found that Black respondents were more likely to think this was very important to know when compared to other underrepresented communities. And then for the top information type here, potential risks and benefits, we found that white respondents were actually more likely to report that this was very important compared to all other race groups. And then we also wanted to look at the importance of knowing that both the study staff and participants would be representative of diverse communities, prior to making that participation decision. And overall, we found that the majority of respondents really found this either somewhat or very important. Slightly more important was knowing that the participants were representative of diverse communities when compared to, this top bar, which is the study staff. And when we looked more into kind of who was reporting importance where, we found that Black respondents were more likely to indicate that knowing that both the study staff and the study participants were representative of diverse communities was very important when compared to Asian and white respondents. And then Hispanic subgroups we found were specifically more likely to think that the study staff being representative of diverse communities was very important when compared to non-Hispanic subgroups. So now we are going to dive a little bit more into the engagement preferences and what types of factors are important in clinical research studies and what types of factors might help retain participants. So first, we looked at a few different types of models of clinical research studies, and we provided these 4 options. So having all study visits at the study clinic, having some study visits at the study clinic and some study visits at home, having a nurse come to the participant's home for all of their study visits, or having the participant collect all of their own health data on their own at home. And we wanted to see, how willing participants would be to participate in each of these types of models. And so as you can see here, most were either somewhat willing or very willing to participate in any of these 4 models. There's really not any large differences between the 4. So, while all study visits in the study clinic or some study visits at home and some in the clinic were, the leading choices by a bit, we can really tell that there's no clear winner here, and all models were, desirable to some respondents. And then looking a little further into the subgroup divisions here, we found that non-Hispanic respondents were a little bit more likely to report being very willing to participate in any of these 4 models when compared to Hispanic subgroups. And then for the model of collecting all of their own health data on their own at home, we found that Black subgroups were actually more likely to be very willing to participate in this type of model when compared to Asian respondents or those falling under all other race subgroups. And so then we looked at the clinical research study features that would be important to participation. And so specifically here, we're looking at those who have never participated in a clinical research study and what types of features they would like to see in a clinical research study. So the top 3 features here that we see are being provided with supporting information on managing their health condition in general, being provided with supporting information on the clinical research study, and being provided with the opportunity to complete a satisfaction survey on the study and really to provide their feedback. So while these are the top 3 features that respondents thought would be most important, we actually found that among Hispanic and Black subgroups, there were a few features that they found most important that were different than those that non-Hispanic and white subgroups found very important. And those were kind of different than those leading categories. So those features that Hispanic and Black subgroups were more likely to cite as very important were mobile app availability, information specific for caregivers, being able to review and sign documents in electronic format, and some or all study visits conducted in the home or in the office. So then we also looked at the features that would help retain participants in a study and motivate them to not drop out. And for this one, we used a rank system here. So you can see it's ranked 1 through 10. And the total score was calculated using weighted value of all respondents' ranks. So the top 3 ranks that we see here are feeling and seeing a benefit from the study drug, being informed of the clinical research progress on a regular basis, and having study visits with flexible times. So those are, the top 3 factors that would really motivate individuals to continue in the clinical research study if they were to enroll. At the bottom, we see having transportation provided and having childcare available. So while these are clearly useful features to have in a study, those were not kind of ranked as critical factors to have in order to prevent participants from dropping out of a study. So then we looked at receiving study results and the importance of that, and also preferences around receiving study results. And overall, we found that it was very important to respondents to receive some sort of study result overall. So we looked at, so in 2019, we found that 85% of respondents found it somewhat or very important to receive those summary results, compared to in 2021, 91% of respondents found it either somewhat or very important to receive some sort of summary of their results. And when we looked at how they would like to receive that summary of results, the top response was an electronic summary being emailed to them, followed by a printed summary mailed to them. So those were, by far the top 2 options as a method to receive summary of their results. And then when looking at what type of information they would like to see after the study, the top mentions were individual study results, a summary of the study results, whether they received the study drug or the placebo, drug approval status, and the brand name for the study drug. And those largely stayed pretty consistent with 2019 findings, where the general summary, individual results in study drug or placebo were also among those top mentions. And now I will turn it back to Jessica for participation experiences.
Thanks, Gina. So now we'll explore participation experiences of those who had participated in a clinical research study. And for this section, our sample size was just over 5,500 respondents, and it was the largest sample size of individuals who had participated compared to previous studies. And so as you can see, so we looked at the type of study that individuals participated in. And so largely it's observational studies at 43%. With interventional studies, and compared to 2019, there was a slight decline of respondents who had participated in an interventional study. And new to the 2021 survey, we had also asked about the study model. And so when framing this question, we had also provided context and the definition for each type of trial. And the majority of individuals, so 55%, had participated in a traditional trial, with 26% in a remote or virtual trial, and then 15% identified as having participated in a hybrid or combination trial. And so of those respondents, altruism was really the top reason for individuals participating in the clinical research study, with 39% of individuals citing to help advance science and the treatment of their condition. Another top mention was also to help others who suffer from their disease or condition, with 31%. And these top motivators are consistent with findings from 2019 as well. So we're seeing these across the years as the motivators for and the altruistic reasons for participation. And also of note, so individuals who identify as white were also more likely to cite helping to advance science than individuals who identified as Black or Asian. We also saw as a general trend that individuals who identified as non-Hispanic were more likely to cite helping to advance science, help others, as well as to receive monetary compensation. So for the top three mentions, those are more often cited by individuals identifying as non-Hispanic. But we did also find that there were no significant differences by race or ethnicity for obtaining education as a decision for participation in clinical research study. So looking closely at the overall experience of the clinical research study, the top cited burdens for individuals who had participated were traveling to the study clinic and undergoing diagnostic testing, as well as the length of the study visit. And these were pretty consistent from 2019 as well. And so as you can see in the call out and thinking about the travel time to the study clinic, a large portion of individuals traveled 30 minutes or more to get to their study clinic one way, which would be an hour driving to and from the study clinic, resulting in a burden of participation. And so different ways to help make the participation less disruptive were cited as virtual study visits. So that was a top mention with 38%, followed by not having to travel as far to get to study visits. So again, keeping in mind that travel time to and from the study visit, but then also having a study nurse or doctor come to the home for a study visit was also viewed receptively. So going back to Gina's comment about different types of models, so those keeping in mind the virtual study visits, having nurse come to the home could be an option as well to help reduce disruption. Individuals also cited having a prepaid debit card or having travel assistance as well would be something that they would be interested in to help, again, reduce that disruption. And so looking closely too at reasons for stopping participation. And so poor communication was really the overall driver for individuals who'd stop participating. And so in 2021, this year's results, 77% of individuals participated in the entire study, which is slightly higher than in 2019, where 75% of individuals reported completing the entire study. And so if we look a little bit closer at the 14% of individuals who had stopped before their last scheduled visit, the top mention was really that there was poor communication with the study center. It was also followed by the study site location. So again, thinking about that travel and the distance and the burden that's associated with that. That's another reason why individuals stop participation, as well as side effects. And then also procedures were regarded as too cumbersome. And so compared to 2019, these are the top mentions for stopping participation were pretty consistent, although in 2019, time commitment was also regarded as a top mention for stopping that participation. And so if we look overall just at general experiences, these are indicators of how well individual or overall perceptions of clinical research, and there seems to be a generally high satisfaction with experience, especially compared to previous years. And so if we're looking at the data from previous years, so 2015, 2019, and 2021, it seems like that participation had either met expectations or greatly exceeded expectations, especially compared to previous years. It's also important to note that we did not ask this question in the 2017 survey. But again, the large majority of individuals reported that participation had met or greatly exceeded their participation experiences. And part of this can also be attributed to the care and attention that was received. And so as you can see, the majority of individuals, so 97%, reported that they either received the same or much better care, which is a strong indication of overall satisfaction. And looking to 2019, it seems as though individuals reported that their care received for much or somewhat better was 65% there. Was 45% in 2019 compared to 65% in 2021. So there's an overall increase in the care and attention that was received as well through participation. Gina?
Thanks, Jessica. So now we're going to look specifically at participation experiences and how they were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we asked participants about what types of changes they saw in their clinical research study participation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the top results here were a change from in-person clinic visits to virtual clinic visits, use of telemedicine, and study medication delivered directly to home. And we only found that 13% reported none of the above. So a majority of participants did see some sort of change resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. But then we also wanted to ask about what types of changes respondents felt should continue to be part of clinical research studies even after the pandemic ended. And the top mentions of those features they felt should continue were use of telemedicine, change from in-person clinic visits to virtual clinic visits, study medication delivered directly to home, use of smartphone apps and other technologies, and a reduced number of in-person clinic visits. So overall, we can really tell that a lot of these features were beneficial and helpful to participants and something that they felt would be useful to their participation even after the pandemic has ended. So just to recap on our key takeaways and implications from the study and what we've discussed so far, we found that general clinical research awareness and perceptions were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So that increase of overall awareness and of those who had been asked to participate in clinical research study, while there's still a bit of confusion on the actual definition of a clinical research study. And then following that, the importance of communicating accurate educational information through trusted channels. And the importance of transparency to rebuild trust. So especially thinking about those pharmaceutical companies and how sharing information could help build trust among participants. So we also found that technology and other convenience enhancing initiatives make an overall impact on experiences. So really thinking about those changes to clinical research study participation due to COVID-19 and how many of them, including telemedicine, reduced number of in-person visits were actually very useful to participants and how they would continue to be useful in clinical research studies in the future. And then also pointing out how no one size fits all and options are key. So really thinking about those different types of models that we presented, having some studies, some visits at home and some at the clinic, and how we really did not see one winner in terms of those models. So having options would really allow the participant to choose what works best for them. So then also just having the opportunity to increase awareness and engagement among diverse communities with targeted approaches, and rebuilding trust and increasing awareness overall with community partnerships. And then really being able to customize clinical trial options based on needs of the community and increase access. So really paying attention to, what features were important to different groups in terms of clinical trials, and being able to implement those depending on the population that the clinical research study might be enrolling. So with that, I will hand it back over to Anik to kick off our panel discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Jessica and Gina. I know that was a wonderful presentation, and I know we covered a lot of information. But now I wanted to invite our panelists, Kim, Crystal, and Stephanie, and would love to discuss some of the things that you've heard and some of the findings and how they might relate to some of your experiences either at the site, at your sites, Crystal and Kim, or via your experiences as a patient, Stephanie, and also, when engaging with your extended communities as well. So maybe Stephanie, we can start with you. What are, in terms of everything that we've heard, do some of the things resonate with either your own experiences or the experiences you've heard in your community?
Absolutely, Anik. I think these study results are very intriguing and very much reflect the thoughts of the community. One of the things I found really interesting was the traveling to study clinics being burdensome to people. I think that's especially true for patients with musculoskeletal diseases. Patients get stiff, pain, especially people with, severe disabilities. So it's fascinating to me that you guys were able to reflect these thoughts from the community about the improvement in telemedicine, the desire to continue with virtual visits, and shipping study medications. Those are things I've heard from the community, and I feel very strongly about them also. Another thing I found really interesting was that a lot of patients and a lot of participants want to receive the results of the study, especially those with altruistic reasons and the desire to help others who suffer from the same disease. So it's fascinating to me because patients, in a general sense, are huge consumers of research. One thing I noticed, especially in my community in 2020 and 2021, was the desire for patients to share study results on their social media channels with friends and family members. We saw a huge increase in sharing this type of information. And I think that's fascinating that you guys were able to capture that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. How about you, Crystal and Kim? What have, do any of the findings resonate with your the patients that come into your sites?
So with the patients that come in our site, we're a smaller town, so they don't typically mind the drive and transporting back and forth. Telemedicine has been great for some of our patients and our physicians, making it easier for them to still be able to communicate with us, whether it is an office visit or just to check in. So that's nice. It's something I would like to see moving forward. But at the same time, we do like to still see those participants in office. For our clinical trials, having them come in, it makes it great to have that one-on-one, that communication with them, where they can actually come in and still speak with the physician and the study coordinators at the same time. And I think they enjoy that.
That's great. Go ahead, Kim.
Yes. So for our Metairie location, because we're so close to New Orleans, a lot of our patients do ride the bus and have difficulty getting transportation. So it has been very helpful to have the telemedicine for them.
And what are some of the challenges that you've encountered with, telemedicine, meaning like video conference directly with the study staff and the study doctor. Have there been challenges?
So there are some challenges, just because like if they're having, they need a physical exam or things like that, if there's an adverse event, they're not in the office for the physician to listen to them or, do a full physical.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was going to follow up with that because in clinical research, we have a lot of participants that come back and do multiple studies. So we do get an extensive medical history on those participants, but there's those that are new. So our physicians might not be as familiar with them. So doing a telemedicine or a home health visit where we're sending maybe a study coordinator and the doctor's not there, it's harder to make sure we're collecting all the data that we need, and he's able to make a clear judgment on what judgment call on what he's providing back to the patients.
And I know that you had mentioned in the past that you really pride yourself on, forming those close connections, those personal connections, and the importance of them coming in, right?
Absolutely.
So from a patient point of view, obviously you want to see them in person sometimes, but how have they mentioned anything about missing some of that personal connection, via, especially during the pandemic, I guess?
Yes, our patients, even during the pandemic, they still wanted to come on site. We were given the option to open it up to allow telemedicine or, drive through options of just coming up where they don't have to come into the office. But a majority of our patients, they still like to come in. It's that comfort level. They like to come in, they like to talk to us, see what's going on. As long as they can come in and see the flow of the trial and how it works, and having that time to really sit down and speak with the coordinator or the PI, any of our investigators, that's definitely comforting to them. It makes them want to come back for more trials. And I think that's why we do have such a good retention rate here. And we have participants that want to continue with more trials moving forward. There is a very small percentage of patients of ours that don't want to come back. They always ask at the end of a trial, let me know of the next one, because they feel comfortable. They get that one-on-one with the doctor, and he goes in and he goes over the consent form with them. He explains any questions that they have, even non-study related questions, because comfort is very, very, very important. A lot of these people come in for new visits and it's their first time doing a trial. And although they're accepting of it and they want to, they're still fearful. There's still some fear in the back of their mind if they're going to be well taken care of. These physicians don't know much about my medical history. How are they going to know? Well, we want to sit there and we want to get to know you and we want to make you feel comfortable. So although telemedicine and home health visits are great, we love that interaction of inpatient visits. So we do try to push for that as long as they feel comfortable and are willing to keep coming back. But the options of having those available is great. It's great for the participants and for the physicians.
That's great. And Stephanie, just I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about your clinical trial experience and some of the highlights and lowlights, if you will.
Absolutely. I have to take my hat off to Crystal and her study center for having such excellent communication with the patients. I think that's amazing. One thing that, and it kind of what you said just reminded me of my experience during my clinical trial. And there was such a poor communication with the study center. It wasn't a great experience. I remember just prior to me exiting the study, and this was before the completion of the study, so I dropped out. But one of the visits, this location was more than 30 minutes away from my home. And even though it was at my doctor's office, their study times were very limited. Like I think it was like 9 to 3 or something like that. And I remember this one time I set up an appointment at 12 p.m. And the person who was in charge of me, I had texted her, yes, I'll be there at 12. I got in a little bit of traffic. And I remember actually entering the parking garage on the level where the study center was at 12:01, and I saw this lady coming out of the office and into the parking garage, and it was the person who was in charge of me, and I was like, oh, where are you going? I'm sorry, I'm late, I'm parking now. I'm sorry, I got into some traffic. And she's like, nope, sorry, I gotta go to lunch. And it was pretty horrible. I felt bad for being late, obviously, but it was such a short time difference. But it shows that level of communication and mutual respect, it matters, and being compassionate to the participants, it really does matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it shows with Crystal's retention rates.
Absolutely. Yeah, that personal relationship can really help shape experiences. I guess, and looking back at your experience, obviously that you mentioned, the location and the relationship with the study staff. Anything else that you might change about your experience when you reflect back on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that were kind of interesting to me that might not happen now during, now post-pandemic life, is that some of the study appointments were me watching videos on a screen and her watching me watch videos. I don't know if that makes sense. And so looking back, if this had happened during the pandemic, that might not have happened. I might not have been called in. So the use of telemedicine, virtual visits, that might have increased. And thus that would have probably kept my retention a lot higher, instead of having me come in, so often just to watch these videos.
Right. And Kim and Crystal, I wanted to talk also, as you all are aware, increasing representation among certain communities in clinical trials is obviously a huge effort these days in our space. What might you suggest, Crystal and Kim, and what have been your experiences, especially since you I think operate in different types of rural and urban type settings? What do you think might be helpful to kind of reach those communities better? And what kind of recruitment strategies would you say have worked among those particular communities?
For recruitment strategies, we like to go out and recruit as often as we can. We also, by showing our participants that come in, a good environment while they're here, a friendly environment, they're more likely to refer or bring other participants in. I do think, though, in clinical research, we tend to advertise a lot when we have studies going on and upcoming trials, but you don't see a lot of advertisements throughout the year, just explaining the great things that come from clinical research. So I think being able to see more, commercials or not just on social media, but maybe radio advertisements, and expressing the importance of clinical research, not just that we have something going on right now that might benefit you or will help us advance in the future, but just to be able to publicize that out to all the community. As long as we've been here in San Angelo, which has been for over 20 years, we still find people that have never heard of our research center. So, getting out in the community is great, but I think the amazing things that clinical research does for people, we should definitely bring that out to light more, show that in commercial advertisements, billboards, just anything we can do to bring light to research.
That's great. Kim, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
So I was just going to say, we do a lot of, word of mouth referrals. So the way that Stephanie was talking about the way she was treated at the site, that makes me really sad, because the most of our referrals are from word of mouth. So treating your patients, nice and being good to them and accommodating them, they'll help you spread the word. So I think that's one of the most important things.
Absolutely. And, even thinking about, Gina had shared some statistics around, some of the things that people would like, elements of clinical research participation that are here to stay. after the pandemic is over. And obviously, you know, and it's connected to obviously the burden of the location of a site as well. What are some things in your opinion that, you know, are here to stay? You know, as part, you know, that will become a permanent part of the clinical research landscape?
Telemedicine. It works
Mhm.
great. You know, our
Mhm.
doctors like it. They do it with their private in their private practice. It works for them. So telemedicine is great. We do want to keep that PI oversight. So although, you know, going to someone's home, and really it depends on the clinical trial itself, the procedures that are going to take place during that time. But I do believe of all of them, I think telemedicine will be the most important. And
The most
it is
important
easy
piece.
for the patient. Yes.
How about, you know, shipping medications directly to someone's home?
Oh, well, so we didn't have to ship too much medication to people's home, but there's always that worry. Is it going to get there? Is it going to get there within range? Is there going to be any issues? So, you know, it's very important, you know, to keep up with your investigational product, making sure that, you know, it is good for use when it gets ready to be dispensed to the patient. So, you know, depending on the trial, it could work. It does make me a little worried for knowing that drug is being shipped outside, and is it going to get to the correct person? Is the one that is supposed to be receiving the medication going to get it, or was somebody that might be sharing a home with them going to open the package?
Right.
You know, so we do have worry about that, but it really just depends on the trial itself. It could work.
Great, thank you. And Stephanie, what advice might you have for somebody that's considering research participation?
Personally, I think it's an important step. It's an important part of being a patient, an empowered patient, and learning as much as you can about the disease you live with, and then turning that around and contributing to the learnings. And personally, I would tell them, even though my experience wasn't great, I would still encourage people to do it, because and I would still do a new one if I were given the chance, because I think it is important, and our participation is important to improve the treatment of these diseases that are serious and sometimes lifelong.
And you had mentioned in a past conversation that, you know, in speaking with members of your community, like the impact that, you know, sharing your experiences had on members of your community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think there is a level of just empowerment that happens when people living with these diseases, I've experienced it, others have experienced it, when they share their experiences with others, there's a level of control that you have that might have been taken away when you were diagnosed. So being able to share these experiences, participate, and not only that, but becoming an expert of your disease is so important for patients, emotionally, socially, physically even. So yeah.
Yeah, no, those are really insightful comments. How about Crystal and Kim? What you know, what advice would you have for someone that's thinking about joining a clinical trial?
I think it's important for them to talk to their primary care physician about it, or their specialist. Being able to look up clinicaltrials.gov, learn about the research trials that are going on, and understand why we do them. Also, you know, being able to come up to the center and having that time with the coordinator would also help participants want to, you know, look at participating in trials in the future, because they're having that one-on-one with us. But I definitely recommend looking up the research site that you're going to participate in. Look at clinicaltrials.gov, talk to your doctor. I think those are the most important things you could do before moving forward with participating.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Do you have anything to add, Kim?
No, I think she covered it.
That's great.
I have one thing to add that I just
Yeah,
love
please do.
Crystal said. I think one of the things and that is important to patients too is being able to communicate with family members or trusted friends about their participation and make that decision on their own, but with the help of a support system. One of the things that I experienced during my clinical trial was during the informed consent process, I was instructed to sign right then and there and not able to take that consent paperwork home. And looking back, I wish I had had that opportunity to be able to talk to my husband about it, talk to someone else, one of my friends living with RA. I wish I would have been able to have that opportunity. And we see here in these study results that it is important for patients to be able to talk to their support system too.
Absolutely.
Very important. Very important. We send patients home all the time. If they sit out and they read the consent form and they have questions on it, we don't try to sway them in because we might need that number. We ask them to go home, speak with your family about it, look at it again when you have a little bit more time and you feel comfortable. You're in your home, you're in a comfortable setting, and look through it. And then you can move forward with talking to your physician. We never want to push that on anyone, because if they don't feel comfortable, they're going to stick around for that first visit because it might be hard for them to walk off with, and they won't come back for the second one. So keeping that level of trust and allowing them that time will keep your retention rate up, and then they will come back for more trials. But I think that's definitely important. Something we push at Benchmark. We offer to email the consent form for you to review. We offer for you to come by and pick it up to review it. So absolutely, I am so sorry that you had to go through that. We would never expect anyone to walk into our research center and just sign a consent form.
Or, bring your spouse or your family members with you, and they can meet the doctor and meet the staff and talk with everyone. And if they have any questions, it can be discussed, as long as you're comfortable with them being in there. That's how we do that.
Yeah, and these are excellent points. Definitely things to keep in mind. And it's not an individual journey. The patient has like a whole network of support around them that we need to be incorporate and be considerate of. Well, thank you so much. I do there's some questions that came in through the chat, and I was maybe we can address a couple of those before our time is up today. So one question that came in was one issue that became prominent during the pandemic was mental health. Should trial protocols include provisions for mental health support? I didn't know if you had any thoughts around that. It's a very good question.
That's a great question. We should always try to provide as much assistance for mental health. Our physicians have been great at speaking with our patients about that, and just they may not even have to bring it up, but our investigators go into the office to do an evaluation. Sometimes they don't even require a physical, but if they're right there and they're available, they like to pop in. And that's something that they bring up a lot. How have you been doing since your last visit? And you can't always be direct with everyone because they're not going to come out and give you an honest answer, but there's ways that our physicians kind of work around it and asking other questions to try to get down to the bottom of it and see it's mental health is very important. And it's definitely something that's been a problem during the pandemic.
Yeah, I have to second what Crystal said, because I thought it was so important, especially one thing I've learned as a patient is just the amount of anxiety that's increased as a result of being immunocompromised in the middle of a pandemic. So, that can be remedied with a lot of different ways, having that mental health support, as well as including telemedicine and virtual visits like that to reduce some of that anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, maybe we can take one more question and then we'll turn it to close this webinar. The hour just flew. So another question that came in was basically The data is showing that African Americans would like to know if the study staff is diverse, is a very important aspect for this community. Is there anything else we can do? And I think somebody brought up the term trust as well in the past. You know, is there anything we can do among these communities to help rebuild some of the trust that's been lost, either due to historical events or other perceptions that are out there? I don't know if you had any thoughts or suggestions around that. How can we better engage some of these underrepresented communities?
I actually was, when reviewing the slides, I found that interesting. I think it's, you know, great. Everybody wants to walk into a place and feel comfortable, feel like they are included, and that's important. So, you know, having that diversity available in all research centers and in our hospitals and so forth, it's important. You don't think about it often until you see a polling like this, and then you think for a minute, well, why is that important, until you start kind of really digging that deeper into it. And I think, like you said, it's a level of comfort. And so, yeah, very important. I can definitely see why diversity in not just participants. I mean, we know why we want it in participants. We want to be able to gauge a full understanding of how medications work for everyone, but to be able to see that and understand why it's important for them to not only be just participants, but also at the research site. I could totally understand why people would want to see that diversity more.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie or Kim, any other thoughts to add there? Well, we are almost at the top of the hour. I just wanted to say thank you so much to our panelists. That was a really wonderful discussion. I don't know if Ken, if you had any remarks?
I just wanted to thank everyone as well. That was really a great panel discussion at the end. Really some great insights, and thank you for sharing your observations. And just again, to thank the whole CISCRP team for all of their hard work on the P&I study and hosting the webinar today.
Thank you so much, Ken, and to our panelists. And Jessica, can we just, show, we just wanted to thank also all of the people that were involved in pulling together this study. It's definitely not something we just did on our own. We just are very thankful for our partners in the process. And as we mentioned in the chat, we will make the presentation as well as the recording available so you can view it on your own time. And we're happy to answer some of the questions we didn't get to today as well. So thank you very much for your time. And also I wanted to mention that the reports will be uploaded that will contain more detailed results, will be uploaded to the CISCRP website next week. And we also have, if you have any questions of the study, please feel free to reach out to myself, Jessica, or Gina. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have. And certainly we'll be sharing a lot of these results in various conferences, as well as trade journal articles. So we look forward to sharing these results more broadly in the coming weeks and months. So thank you again for your time. Thank you to the panelists, Stephanie, Crystal, Kim, and Jessica, and Gina for presenting some of the results. And thank you, Ken, also for joining us as well. We hope you have a wonderful day.